10 skills. Every single one of them was standard practice in American households before 1950. Every single one of them was replaced by a product, a service, or a regulation within 2 generations. And every single one of them is more mechanically efficient than its modern replacement if you understand how it actually works. That's what this video is about. Not the nostalgia, not the aesthetics of old-fashioned living, but the actual physics and biology behind why these methods worked better, cost less, and built households that didn't need permission from anyone to keep the lights on. Number 1. Growing a backyard vegetable garden. Detroit, 1943. A woman reaches into a 20 by 20 foot plot behind her row house and pulls a tomato off the vine. She's feeding 4 people from soil that cost her nothing but time. That wasn't unusual. By 1943, Victory Gardens across the country produced roughly 40% of all vegetables consumed in America. Not 4%. 40. From backyards, vacant lots, and window boxes, ordinary households ran a food system that the entire commercial agriculture industry couldn't match on a per-calorie per dollar basis. Your grandfather didn't garden because he enjoyed it. He gardened because the math was obvious to anyone counting money at the end of the week. Number 2. Repairing and reusing items instead of replacing them. In 1955, a marketing consultant named Victor Lebo published a piece in the Journal of Retailing. He wrote that the American economy required that we make consumption our way of life, that we convert the buying and use of goods into rituals. That wasn't a critique. It was a business plan, and within 15 years it had restructured manufacturing around planned obsolescence. General Motors pioneered this in the 1920s under Alfred Sloan, who introduced annual model changes specifically to make last year's car feel inadequate. Your grandfather understood the counter-argument in his hands. A cast iron pan doesn't wear out. A leather boot resoled 3 times outlasts 4 pairs of cheap ones. The business model of waste depends on you never doing that math out loud. Number 3. Preserving food through canning and drying. Your grandmother's pressure canner wasn't a quaint kitchen accessory. It was a sterilization chamber that used pressurized steam to kill Clostridium botulinum spores at 240 degrees Fahrenheit, which is 12 degrees above boiling, and the exact temperature needed to destroy the most heat-resistant pathogen in the home food supply. She knew this not because she studied food science, but because the knowledge traveled with the equipment, mother to daughter, every August. Here's what the grocery store replaced that with: the exact same biology, run through a commercial retort process, with markups added at the farm, the plant, the distributor, the retailer, and the packaging manufacturer. The biology didn't change. The cost structure did. Number 4. Cooking simple meals from basic ingredients. Depression cake had no eggs, no butter, no milk. Flour, sugar, cocoa, water, oil, vinegar, and baking soda. And it worked because the vinegar reacted with the baking soda to produce carbon dioxide, which leavened the batter the same way eggs would have. The women who developed it weren't cutting corners. They were applying chemistry to whatever the pantry held. A box of cake mix cost 3 times the ingredient price of that same cake. That gap isn't accidental. The moment you understand the underlying reaction, you don't need the box, and the profit lives entirely in the space between you and that knowledge. Number 5. Bartering goods and services with neighbors. March 6, 1933, Roosevelt declared a national bank holiday and shut every bank in the country for 4 days. People with money in those banks couldn't touch it, but the farmer with eggs, the neighbor with a wood saw, the woman who could cut hair, they kept trading. The barter economy didn't replace the dollar economy. It ran underneath it the whole time, and when the dollar layer seized up, the layer underneath kept people fed. Economists call barter inefficient, and they're right at scale in anonymous markets. In a neighborhood where you know who has what, that inefficiency disappears entirely. Your grandfather didn't barter because he was poor. A dollar's a promise. A dozen eggs is a dozen eggs. Number 6. Saving seeds from each harvest. Your grandfather walked his garden every fall with a paper envelope and a pencil. He'd pull the best tomato off the best plant, squeeze the seeds onto a cloth, let them dry, and label the envelope with the variety name and the year. That act, repeated every season, meant he never bought seeds, not once. The Plant Variety Protection Act of 1970 and a Supreme Court ruling in Diamond versus Chakrabarty 10 years later built the legal framework that let seed companies own a genetic sequence and ban a farmer from replanting it. The skill didn't change. The law did. A family saving open-pollinated seeds owns its food supply at the genetic level. A farmer buying patented hybrid seed signs that ownership over every spring, because most F1 hybrids don't breed true in the second generation anyway. The dependency isn't just contractual, it's biological, built into the plant itself. Number 7. Hanging clothes on a clothesline instead of using a dryer. A residential dryer burns between 4 and 6 kilowatt hours per load. At average US electricity rates, that's 60 to 90 cents every time you press start. And that's before you count what the machine does to the clothes themselves. That gray lint in your dryer trap? That's your shirts and sheets ground down fiber by fiber with every cycle. A clothesline applies zero mechanical stress and costs nothing to run. Here's the part that got regulated. Starting in the 1950s and accelerating through the 1970s, homeowners associations banned clotheslines through deed restrictions. The stated reason was aesthetics. The actual effect was mandatory utility consumption, written into the deed of your own home. Number 8. Keeping a pantry of shelf-stable staples. Your great-grandmother bought 50 pounds of flour in October because flour was cheap after harvest. When prices climbed in February, she didn't pay the spike. She was already holding the flour, so the spike didn't exist for her household. The modern grocery store carries about 3 days of supply for the surrounding population. That's not a safety net. That's a business model optimized for the retailer's cash flow, not yours. And when a storm or supply disruption hits, those shelves empty fast. White rice sealed in a container lasts 25 to 30 years. Dried beans store just as long. Salt, honey, and hard wheat berries, stored properly, last indefinitely. Every jar on that shelf is a transaction you already made at the price you chose, not the price the store needs today. Number 9. Using leftovers creatively instead of wasting food. After Sunday dinner, your grandmother didn't throw away the chicken carcass. She covered it with water, dropped in the onion skins she'd saved all week, the celery tops, the carrot ends, and let it simmer for 3 hours. That pot became the base for the next 4 meals. The fat that rose to the top got skimmed and saved for cooking. The only thing that left that kitchen was a small pile of spent solids. The average American household now throws away about $1,500 worth of food every year. That's a car payment, leaving the house in a trash bag, and nobody's selling you a product to stop it. Number 10. Sharing tools and equipment within the community. A post-hole digger gets used maybe 4 times in a decade. Your grandfather knew this, so the post-hole digger lived with whoever needed it most and traveled from yard to yard with no paperwork and no fee. That system cost nothing to run, and it worked because everyone in a 2-block radius knew who had what. The tool rental industry now pulls in around $5 billion a year, selling access to the gap that replaced that network. 10 households sharing one $300 tool spend $30 each. 10 households buying their own spend $800 total for the exact same hole. Find a neighbor who needs something sitting in your garage right now. Every skill on this list has a modern replacement that costs more, breaks faster, and requires you to keep paying someone else to maintain it. That's not progress. That's a business model. And your grandfather saw through it because he had to count the money himself at the end of the week. The pattern runs the same across all 10. A household practice gets replaced by a product. The product needs ongoing purchase. The purchase needs ongoing income, so the chain of dependency gets longer, and each new link is a fresh point of failure. Pick one. Try it this week. The knowledge is yours by inheritance, and it's been waiting.